Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 9th of May, 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So apologies for missing yesterday's episode, everyone. I've been missing a few episodes over the last few weeks. And there's no real reason why. Just sometimes I just do not have the time to do them. And honestly, I know it kind of like hurts whenever I announce in the Discord channel that I'm going to miss an episode. It hurts me as well that I'm not able to do it. I love doing these episodes, and every time I'm not able to do one, I kind of try to make it work, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. But of course, I'm always back the next day or the day after, like I am today. So let's get into the news from the last few days, starting off with a tweet thread from the Protocol Guild. So the Protocol Guild was deployed 1 year ago as of May 8th. They deployed their 0x splits vesting contract and kicked off the pilot. So today, May 8th, marks 1 year of experimentation with the mechanism uniquely tailored to incentivizing Ethereum's core protocol work. And during that time, Ethereum's ecosystem and community stepped up bigly with $15 million worth of donations, which is pretty cool because if I remember correctly, the target for the pilot was 10 million. So we went 5 million over target here. And you can see the Protocol Guild is thanking a bunch of teams and individuals here who donated. Of course, I've been donating my ODAB rewards to the Protocol Guild. I also donated all the proceeds that came from the NFT mint that we did, the first anniversary Daily Gwei NFT mint, not to the Protocol Guild, but to a similar effort that was going to core devs. So it's just been great to see, obviously, core devs getting a lot of funding through that other grant that was set up, and also the Protocol Guild here. Now, I've mentioned before how the Protocol Guild has big goals. They want to go way beyond 10 million in funding. They want to go potentially up to $1 billion or more in funding for the core devs and researchers. And what's really cool about that is if you do like a naive kind of napkin math here and say that there's 130 core protocol contributors, right, devs and researchers, and if say they've got $1 billion and you divide that by 130, then each one of those members would get $7.7 million over time. Now, of course, it is not evenly split. Not everyone will be part of the, not all of those 130 people will be part of the Protocol Guild forever, because they come and go, right? And it is split depending on the amount of work that's being done, the amount of contributions that are being done. But yeah, I just did it like an even kind of split there, but it's definitely not an even split. And you can actually see the split on the Protocol Guild's Do Analytics page, I believe, and the Protocol Guild's website, I believe, as well. But still, if we had $1 billion, there'd be millions of dollars at least going to individual researchers and core developers, which I think is really, really cool. Now, what's really cool about this is that it's funding, I guess, core development and research without having to issue more tokens to do it. And I spoke about this last week, where essentially there are chains like Zcash which give a percentage of the block reward to the core development team. I don't know if it's in perpetuity, but they've been doing it for quite a while now. Obviously, with the Ethereum, it had a token sale, and then it launched its token, and a bunch of those were allocated to the Ethereum Foundation, who sell from time to time. I mean, I'm sure you guys saw them selling the other day, or sending a bunch of ETH to Kraken the other day. And then, yeah, there's been ideas floated around about funding public goods from the gas fees instead of burning the gas fees. And I discussed last week why that is not really a great idea. So I think the next best idea, or at least probably the best idea that we've come up with so far, is the Protocol Guild, where people can voluntarily donate to the Protocol Guild. The different projects in the ecosystem can also allocate a portion of their tokens, whether that's at token generation or just paying it out from the treasury, to the Protocol Guild in order to reward the people that are building the network that they're building their products on. So I do think the Protocol Guild is by far the best effort that we have come up with to date in the scope of funding core dev and research. Obviously, Gitcoin has done a lot of work in that area as well, but they have a broader scope here. It's not just for core devs and researchers. Gitcoin is trying to be for a lot more, a lot of different kind of organizations, individuals, and projects, whereas the Protocol Guild is definitely squarely focused on Ethereum core protocol contributors, whether they be researchers or developers. So just great to see this growth in just a year of existence. Can't wait to see what the next year is like for the Protocol Guild. All right, so Superfuse put a tweet out, I believe yesterday, where he said, 1st of December 2020, the Beacon Chain launched. 22nd of September 2022, Proof of Stake replaced Proof of Work with the merge. The 12th of April 2023, withdrawals from staking were enabled. And the 7th of May 2023, those who wished to withdraw completed the action, and the withdrawal queue has been emptied. Proof of stake is done. So yeah, yesterday we did have 0 validators in the withdrawal queue. So it's basically empty, as Superfizz says here, whereas we had almost 30,000 people wanting to enter staking, or validators, I should say, not people, wanting to stake here. Now, if I go to the Beacon Chain website and bring it up, I think it's gone up a bit on both ends here. So it's not 0 anymore, but you can see here that essentially, it is 30,800 validators that want to get into the active validator set, and only 48 validators that want to exit the kind of the Beacon Chain right now, which is just huge, guys. Like, honestly, I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's just amazing how like cleanly this played out, where we didn't really have many people withdrawing. We had the forced withdrawals from Kraken, we had a few LSDs withdraw to do the arbitrage opportunity, but for the most part, it has been up only for the validators and the ETH staked within the network here, which has just been absolutely amazing to see. As you can see here, we're at over 18 million ETH staked with almost 31,000 pending validators, which I believe the queue for that, I think, is like 18 days right now or something like that to get in. So if you were to try and spin up a validator today, I think it's around 18 days you'd have to wait for your validator to be active in the network. So just a crazy wait time there. It's almost 3 weeks now, which is pretty insane. Now, speaking of withdrawals as well, I should mention that Lido put an update out about their V2 today, which includes withdrawals for Lido. So they say here, Lido V2 will be live after the vote enactment on May 15th. So I think that the V2, I mean, from what I can see, he'll be going live on May 15th if all goes to plan here. So not too long now for Lido to enable withdrawals, about 6 days from today. And then we can start really seeing the kind of great reshuffling play out. And then it really is on all the projects to compete with Lido, all the other LSD projects to compete with Lido. I know Rockapool's been having a bunch of really great growth lately, and looking at the kind of breakdown of where stake is going is generally healthy. Lido is definitely still getting more inflows. I mean, if I bring up rated.network and I show you what it looks like right now, you can actually see this for yourself. If you go to network overview on the left-hand side, and then you scroll down, you can see the validator activation distribution by entity. You click this little pie chart here, and then once you open that, you can see where the validators are going. So the top is unidentified validators, which is standing at about 34% right now of the validators entering are unidentified. That doesn't mean that they're all solo stakers. It just means that we don't know, obviously, which party they identify with, but obviously there are solo stakers fall into that category. In second place is Coinbase at 17.3%, Lido at 16.6%, Ledger Live, which is interesting, at 8.3%, Rockapool at 7.4%, and then you can see it goes down from there. But you know what? It's actually generally kind of healthy, I think. I obviously would like to not be seeing so much stake continuing to go into Lido and even Coinbase at this stage, but that's not surprising to me. What I'm really liking seeing is the fact that it's not like 80% Lido and Coinbase, for example, right? Where it's about 30% right now, or 32, 33% into Lido and Coinbase, and other services like Ledger Live and Rockapool are competing with them here, especially Rockapool, the decentralized service, is competing here, and the unidentified validators being, I'm assuming, solo validators or just maybe institutional validators that want to stake on their own and things like that. It's great to see that playing out as well. And if you go and look at the exit distribution by entity, I mean, it's kind of noisy. You have Coinbase at 52%. I think the Coinbase validators exiting are due to the arbitrage opportunity between CB ETH and ETH. I've noticed that CB ETH constantly trades at a discount for some reason. There seem to be people who just panic sell CB ETH into a liquidity pool, push the price down, someone buys it up, and then immediately arbs it through Coinbase because they're able to essentially arb that spread there. And I mentioned before how the only people that can do this are ones with a Coinbase account. So maybe people who have CB ETH that don't have a Coinbase account have to exit on the secondary market, and they don't care if they have to, I guess, like incur some slippage because of the fact that They just want to get out of their position. Now, this unfortunately does bring a kind of a two-tiered marketplace here, where essentially if you had CB ETH, the only way you can get out of it is through the secondary market instead of going through Coinbase, because you don't have access to a Coinbase account for one reason or another. It's kind of like shitty, but I guess that's the product, right? At the end of the day, no one's forcing you to buy a CB ETH or stake with Coinbase or anything like that. And that's another point, I guess, for decentralized staking. If you stake as part of Rocket Pool, or if you stake on your own as a solo validator, you don't have to worry about any of that, right? Like, you can do the arbitrage opportunity as well. Anyone can do it. It's permissionless to do that with Rocket Pool through the mini pools and stuff like that. So yeah, that's just another, I guess, kind of tick for Rocket Pool and other decentralized services there. But if we go to rated.network, the main page, and see the staking breakdown right now, all services are kind of growing right now. I think that it's going to be interesting to see what Lido looks like post withdrawals. I'm not expecting any kind of sudden major moves when Lido enables withdrawals. I'm not expecting like all this stake to come out of Lido and go somewhere else. As I said before, it's going to take a while. It's going to take other staking protocols being more competitive than Lido. It's going to take a lot of work on multiple different fronts. I mean, I have confidence that we'll get there, but it's not going to be an overnight thing, as I've explained before. And one other thing I wanted to point out about staking as well is that the APR has just skyrocketed lately for staking. So pretty much every staking service is paying, what, 7 to 8%? Or, actually 7 to 9% if you look down here, at backward APR over the last week. Now, obviously, this is extrapolating out a yearly APR to the last week, which isn't really accurate, but you can see here 7 to 9% because of the major execution layer rewards that have been going to stakers here. Now, I don't think this includes things like token rewards on top of this, so I don't think this includes the RPL rewards that you get as part of Rocket Pool. So to factor that in, I think you have to do that manually, or you can probably find it on the Rocket Scan website as well. Or just go ask in the Rocket Pool Discord and they'll be able to help you out there. But yeah, the APR has gone up because of the execution layer rewards. And I've explained before how it's kind of funny how the more ETH that is staked, the less consensus layer rewards everyone gets. But usually more ETH will be staked because there is more execution layer rewards up for grabs, which there has been because we've been at like, what, 80 plus Gwei for a week now or something like that because of the Pepe meme coin and other such things happening on the network. The execution layer rewards have been quite juicy, and obviously that has attracted a lot of ETH stake into the protocol as well. I do not expect the APR to maintain this high, especially in a kind of like terminal state where essentially fees, even if they're at 100 Gwei, I would expect this APR to fall to like 3 to 4% or something like that, even potentially lower than that. I really don't foresee how over the long term, as long as the market is relatively efficient, which I think it generally is over the long term, that APR stays, because that is a huge APR for ETH. I mean, if you are an ETH bull and you expect ETH to go up over time, so you don't mind holding ETH through the volatility, well, if the APR is 8%, you're earning 8% or 8% more ETH. So say you staked 100 ETH here, you're earning, obviously, if you're staking 100 ETH, that would not be as a solo staker, but say you're staking 100 ETH just for ease of discussion here, and you're getting 8%, you're getting 8 ETH a year. Now, that's ETH denominated, and let's say ETH goes 2x, right? Like, it compounds your returns as measured in US dollars. I think that's incredibly attractive, or fiat generally. I think that's incredibly attractive for a lot of people. And obviously, it's attractive to people who want to just stack ETH generally, compound those rewards, do all that good stuff there. But yeah, Lido will be going live with withdrawals on May 15th. All right, so we have a tweet from Domothy here sharing an EIP 4844 readiness checklist. So this is interesting. I've gone over these readiness checklists before of other major upgrades or other major EIPs that have come onto the Ethereum network. Obviously, the most famous being the merge readiness checklist. Well, the 4844 one looks pretty ready to me. There are ticks everywhere here, and you can actually see that on both the execution layer and the consensus layer, most clients have a branch on DevNet right now, and some are working on a mainnet branch as well. So you got links here to all the trackers and the implementation links, which I'll share in the YouTube description below. The spec level open issues and client level open issues, there only seems to be a couple on either side here, which is very promising. APIs are done. Testing is in progress. Obviously, There's a bunch more down here that need to be done, such as shadow forks and obviously forking test nets and then in the end going on to mainnet. But yeah, everything's moving quite smoothly here. I think I'd upgrade my 48-44 chance of inclusion into Cancun to like 99.5% at this point. As I said, the only thing that could prevent it from happening is some catastrophic bug that wasn't found early on that gets found, or something catastrophically wrong in the spec that needs to be changed and takes months to change or something like that. I don't foresee any of that happening, to be honest. So I don't know the Cancun timing, what that's going to look like. I'm still holding out for it happening this year. I still think it can happen this year because we're only in April. We're only in May, guys. Like, so when you think about it, we're in May. A lot of the readiness checklist is already checked off. There are already clients available on DevNets, and they are working on the mainnet branch. So let's say we start forking or start kind of doing test nets in July. Let's say July instead of next month, because I do think we can get some test nets up next month, but let's say July, and then we fork the longer lived test nets in like September, for example, or like late August, and then we do a mainnet date in like November. I mean, I'm giving like worst case timelines here. I don't see how we don't make something like November if we keep this current pace. So definitely can see Denkun going live in November, or earlier than that. And then after that, we obviously won't see an upgrade till the new year. But the fact that we can get 2 major upgrades live this year, I think that's very, very cool for Ethereum. I think that's just miles ahead of what we've been able to do in the past. And as I've said before, 4844 will be the first user-facing upgrade that it affects all users on a major kind of on a major level since EIP 1559, I think. So EIP 1559 went live in August of 2021. So it will have been, I think, 2 years or over 2 years since we had a user-facing, an upgrade that users are actually going to feel. Now, I said before that 4844 on its own is not enough. Obviously, the layer 2s and the rollups, they have to take advantage of it. So, and as I've said this before, it remains to be seen which rollups are going to be ready on like day one to take advantage of 4844. Maybe one of them are, maybe multiple of them are, maybe none of them are. We'll have to see. I would imagine that they've been following along with this quite closely and they want to get this live as soon as possible. So the ideal case would be the 2 major rollups right now, obviously being Arbitrum and Optimism, to have 4844 support out of the box on day one, which would lower their fees by, it should lower their fees by at least 10x, which is a huge improvement. I mean, the fees are already still very cheap compared to mainnet, but that would be a huge improvement, getting them 10 times cheaper than what they are now, at least. Obviously, they can push it further than that, along with any other upgrades they do to the L2s themselves, like more compression upgrades, stuff like that. Well, it remains to be seen what they do there. But yeah, anyway, you can check out this readiness checklist for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so I spoke about Nethermind's new upgrade the other day, which was a major upgrade for the client. Well, the Ethereum on ARM Twitter account has shared this tweet saying, an Ethereum full node up and running in 11 hours. Nethermind is getting better and better. Performance improvements, memory reduction, absolutely brilliant work. We are switching our validators from Geth to Nethermind in the coming weeks. So this is really awesome because the last time I synced Nethermind, I was doing it on my low-powered Rock 5B. I think it took 24 hours to sync from scratch. So if the Ethereum on ARM account is doing this in 11 hours on a Rock 5B board, which I assume that they are, that is huge, guys. Like, that is a massive improvement. 24 hours to 11 hours. And then you've got Lucas here from the Nethermind team saying we'll be even better with future updates. Still a lot of things cooking. This is awesome. I mean, sync time is one of those things that I think that isn't like a huge deal, but is a very, very nice thing to have, especially to encourage people to switch over from their existing client, especially if it's Geth, to Nethermind. So I'm very, very happy to see such a massive improvement from the latest upgrade. I haven't actually run a Nethermind sync from scratch on my machines yet. I have another Rock 5B board that I could use. I don't want to be messing around with my other my live board right now, so I might get that other board out and run Nethermind and see how long it takes on the board and see if I can replicate this 11 hours here. Because if I can, that would obviously be very, 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 very cool. And as I said, Lucas here from the team said that more updates and improvements are coming. So if you are still running Geth, consider running Nethermind, guys. There are actually guides out there if you Google switching from Geth to Nethermind that allow you to basically keep running your Geth client while syncing Nethermind, so you don't have to go offline or anything like that. And then you can just switch over once Nethermind is synced here. But yeah, you can Google for those, and you can find the results there. All right, so the Ethereum Attestation Service has tweeted out a new feature. You can now attest and verify any type of document or file. And they say here, why would you do this? Well, it's going to be increasingly hard to tell what's real or not real with AI. Now, creators can easily generate a hash of their content, attest to it, and let others verify it against the hash. And then they continue by saying there are several use cases this is helpful for. Attesting to a hash of a software release, podcast and video files, documents and PDFs, images, and any type of file. And here's how it works. Upload any document type. The EAS service generates a unique hash. You can attest to the hash and then share for others to verify. So you can try out the new content verification feature for free on Sepolia right now, and it's also available on Optimism, Girly, and Arbitrum. This is something that I think has been talked about for quite a while, where people were saying, how are we going to be able to discern the difference between what's real and what's not in the age of AI, especially when it comes to video and images and things like that? Well, one way of doing it is by having the person generating the content file attesting to it. So for example, let's say there is an interview with the President of the United States, and let's say one interview is real, one interview is not real. How would you be able to tell the difference if the not real one is as real? I mean, it seems as real as the real interview because it's AI generated with voice, video, all that sorts of stuff. Well, the way you would do it is that real video would have an attestation attached to it that basically says, yes, this is, the White House could attest to it and say, we attest this is a real video. Whereas the other one, if it doesn't have an attestation on it, even if it is real, but it doesn't have an attestation on it, you can basically default to not trusting it because it's not attested to by... or the hash doesn't match what the White House has attested to here. And I think this is really the only way to combat the rise of these kind of like AI-generated videos and images. Obviously, it's not going to help in every situation because there are still going to be lots of people out there who just believe what they want to believe when it comes to this sorts of stuff, especially when politics is involved. But it's still very, very powerful because even you as a regular user on Twitter or something, you can put on Twitter, hey, I've uploaded this file, I've attested to it using my Twitter profile or using my public Ethereum address. I could say, okay, I am Sassel.eth. Everyone knows that I own Sassel.eth. I'm attesting to this. It's real. This document's real. This image is real. Whatever is real. I'm putting my kind of weight behind it, putting my word behind it, so to speak, my reputation behind it, which I think is incredibly powerful. And the use cases are endless here. As I've just said before, I am extremely excited about Ethereum Attestation Service. I'm also very excited about the use cases that it can enable outside of EAS itself. So outside of just attesting to things here and there, it can enable real world use cases where we can bring the attestations that we're used to in the real world that we don't even think about on chain. And we can start to build a fully on chain financial system that isn't just based on over collateralization. We could potentially have things like on chain credit scores. We could potentially have things like, banks being able to come on chain and give loans out and things like that. Like, it just opens up a world of possibilities here. So very, very cool new feature from the Ethereum Attestation Service here. You can check it out. I'll link the thread in the YouTube description below. All right, so Gravita Protocol has unveiled themselves here. So what Gravita is a decentralized borrowing protocol built on Ethereum, offering interest-free loans secured by liquid staking tokens or LSTs and more. I say here, as we approach launch soon, we'll unveil in this and upcoming threads some novel and exciting new features we designed. So this is basically, as the tweet says here, an ETH-centric borrowing protocol for LST. So the goal, I believe, of the protocol is to make the LSTs more liquid, basically among themselves. So obviously, there's STETH and RETH and CBETH and BETH. Well, what if there was like a borrowing protocol or a money market that allowed you to use each of these things as kind of like a collateral type, as to borrow it, to do all sorts of arbitrage opportunities, stuff like that. That's what Gravita is trying to do here. Now, it seems that their tweet thread got a little bit cut off here. They deleted a bunch of tweets, but they continue on the tweet by saying, Gravita will issue loans in GRAI or Gray, an over-collateralized debt token with volatility dampening opening mechanisms similar to LUSD. So they are a fork of Liquidity Protocol. Gravita will, however, support multiple collateral types and have mint caps in place, ensuring protocol stability. And they go over their novel features here. So novel feature number 1 is that there is going to be a 0.5% borrowing fee charged upfront on each debt or debt increase, obviously similar to Liquidity here, but to improve the short-term borrowing experience, the fee is refunded pro rata if users repay within 6 months with a minimum fee for 1 week's interest. This effectively sets the cost of borrowing on Gravita at a very competitive max 1% APR. Short and long-term borrowers complement each other, and Gravita's goal is to be the best borrowing venue for both. So very, very cool new project here. You can go check them out for yourself. I'll link them in the YouTube description below. All right, Maker has announced the Spark Protocol launch. Now, I think I've talked about Spark Protocol before on the Refuel, but starting on May 9th, today, Spark Protocol will be available to all DeFi users. So, an end user, DAI-centered DeFi product deployed on Ethereum with supply and borrow features for ETH, STETH, DAI, and SDAI. So basically, Spark Protocol's first version, called Spark Lend, is a lending marketplace specifically designed for supplying and borrowing crypto with a focus on DAI. Its users will be able to interact with Spark's front end directly, connecting Maker's liquidity with a complete DeFi solution. Spark is connected with Maker's D3M module, which allows for the direct wholesale credit line in DAI, which injects and automatically balances fresh DAI liquidity into Spark Lend and enables its users to access the best rates in the market. In short, this means that through Spark Lend, users can now borrow DAI at an initial 1.11% annual rate due to the direct injection of liquidity from Maker. Rates do not increase with utilization no matter what your size is. This is really cool because it's basically integrating Maker's ability to mint and burn DAI as a protocol into a kind of money market, basically, or a lending market, essentially, and makes it so that you can have much more predictable rates here that aren't subject to the whims of the general market. Now, as I said, I've spoken about Spark before on the Refuel, but you can read more about Spark here in this thread, but it is available to all users starting today. But I'll still link the thread in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so there was a bit of drama, I guess, over the last few days because Ethereum's gas fees are high, right? And obviously, whenever gas fees are high for a consistent period of time, people start complaining about it. And people start having, in my opinion, some of the worst takes I've ever seen on gas fees and just like crypto and blockchains in general. And that prompted me to put out this tweet, which is not a normal length tweet. It's a longer tweet here, but I'll read it out just so you have context about what I'm talking about. So I said, I think people generally miss the forest for the trees if they think that speculation isn't an overall net driver of growth for the crypto ecosystem. Why do you think the crypto ecosystem is as big as it is today? It's mainly because of the speculation. This drives more money and attention into the ecosystem, which enables the other use cases and increases their chances of success. Without the opportunity of making money, most people would be completely disinterested in both the speculative and non-speculative use cases of crypto. There'd also be very little incentive for people to spend a lot of money to fight for crypto, like what Coinbase is doing. Speculation is a net good for crypto and society. So I'm going to be the first to admit here that when I first got into crypto in 2013 with Bitcoin, I was in it for the money, right? I was not in it for the technology. I was not in it for being a cypherpunk. I was not in it for changing the world and taking down the Fed or any of that sorts of stuff. I was in it for the money. I saw that you could buy Bitcoin, it went up a lot, right? And you could potentially make money on it. And I think that applies to almost everyone in crypto. I think that most people come into this industry with that mindset, at least at first. Then over time, right, a lot of people, not everyone, but I think a fair chunk of people do more research, right? They get interested in the technology. Maybe they join the ecosystem. Maybe they end up being more of a long-term investor than a short-term speculator. But overall, they bring activity and money and attention to the network, to crypto generally, which it means that crypto has been growing through speculation for as long as it has existed. We know that because every single time we have a bull market, we are left with more people, more money, more funding, more projects than we were before that bull market happened. That's just how crypto has grown so far. Will this always be the case? I don't think so. I think eventually you hit like a plateau and diminishing returns kicks in. in a very extreme way, and crypto just becomes like any other industry where you have gradual growth. But crypto is a high growth industry because, and a highly speculative industry, because it is still rather small. It is still, its adoption curve has a long way to go still, right? And I'm not talking about people buying coins on exchanges. I'm talking about people actually using the on-chain products. We're nowhere near mainstream adoption in that sense, because we still have to build a lot of the infrastructure out, but we also need to build apps that people actually want to use and make them easy for people to use as well. But that doesn't take away from the fact that speculation has been the main driver up until this point, and probably will be for the foreseeable future. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now, how does this relate to Ethereum gas fees? Well, at the end of the day, Ethereum as a network, right, is permissionless, censorship resistant, incredibly neutral. You can use it for whatever you want to. You want to gamble on a meme coin, you can go gamble on a meme coin, right? You want to go kind of like do some real world stuff like borrow some DAI from Maker and go buy a car with it, you can go do that, right? You want to go register an ENS name, something totally non-speculative and non-degenerate, you can go do that as well. But the one through line for all of that is that you have to pay to do this, right? You have to pay a fee to do this. Ethereum sells one product only, really. It sells block space. Now, that block space has different properties attached to it. As I mentioned, decentralization, censorship resistance, credible neutrality. That's what Ethereum's block space has attached to it. And Ethereum's block space is limited. It literally has a hard limit on it called the gas limit. And once that gas limit fills up, which it pretty much is always full, you have to bid against other people in order to get your transaction included. Now, as more people bid, the prices go up, and then it prices out use cases and users. Now, what this does, and why this is a huge net positive, and I've talked about this on the refuel a bunch of times before, but why this is a huge net positive in my view is that it kind of like lights a fire under the arse of people building scaling solutions or looking at the scaling solutions and just scaling Ethereum generally. And because gas fees have been high for such a long time now, even at 10 Gwei, they're not cheap, right? It's still quite high for doing most. You can do most things relatively cheap, but like there are some use cases that are still priced out there. But because of all of this, we had a ton of money, attention, brainpower go into scaling Ethereum, and now we have a vibrant scaling ecosystem. And I do not think that would have happened if we didn't have high fees on Ethereum layer 1. So I think that's obviously a really great thing for Ethereum there. But again, the reason why people are paying the fees is because they want access to Ethereum's block space. Naturally, over time, because Ethereum block space is limited and it's a settlement layer, the highest value use cases that people are willing to pay for, and I'm not talking about highest value in the sense of like a morally kind of correct value or what you consider valuable. I'm talking about what people are willing to pay for. That is the only kind of source of truth that we have. If people are willing to pay $100 to trade for a meme coin on Uniswap, that is the value of what meme coin is to them and the market. You can't just say, oh, well, this is just pointless use case. This is all noise. It doesn't matter. If you want a credibly neutral network and a decentralized network, a permissionless network where anyone can do anything they want on there, well, that's what's going to happen. People are going to vote with their wallet, literally. They're going to pay the fees that is what's worth it to them, and that's what's going to happen. It's going to skyrocket here. Now, of course, a lot of the fees are influenced by other things such as MEV and stuff like that as well, but the MEV opportunities only exist because the regular users are willing to pay the fees to do the transactions and to get sandwich attacked and to get front run and all that sorts of stuff there. So there are always still paying users at the end of the day. Now, naturally, that's going to price out any other things that people don't consider valuable enough to spend fees on. Or to spend high fees on, right? And that's exactly why we have layer 2s. So you can go to layer 2. Yes, they're not as cheap as they're going to be, right? They are going to get cheaper over time with 48, 44 and other upgrades, but they act as a way for people who can't afford layer 1 block space directly to go and buy the layer 2 block space, right? So which taps into layer 1. The analogy that I like to use is Android. Now, I Android and iPhones, for example. But with Android specifically, you can go buy the latest high-end Samsung phone if you can afford it, right? You can go get it and you can enjoy it. Or you can go buy a $50 Android phone, right? And if that's all you really want to buy, or if that's all you can afford, you can go buy it, and you can access the same Play Store. You can access almost all of the same apps. A $50 Android phone and a high-end Samsung phone, which I don't know how much they are these days, but they're obviously thousands of dollars. They're going to run the majority of the same apps, right? Obviously, some games aren't going to run on the $50 phone as opposed to the $2,000 phone, for example, right? But a lot of the same apps, the popular apps like the social media apps and stuff like that, they're going to run on both. One device is a lot more expensive, and people buy that device if they want it. One device is a lot cheaper. They buy that device if they want that. And the same applies to iPhones. You can buy the more expensive iPhone or the cheaper one. At the end of the day, they're products that you buy, and you choose which product that you can afford and which one that you think is worth your money at the end of the day. Maybe you can afford the Samsung and you just think to yourself, well, why would I buy this? I don't need all these features, right? Just like it's the same thing with Ethereum Layer 1. If you don't think that it's worth the fee to pay on Ethereum Layer 1, well, then it's just not worth it to you. Go on Layer 2 and pay the fee there if you think that's a better kind of use of your money. Or if you can't afford it, right, which is true for a lot of things, for most of the people in the world, they can't afford everything. Just because someone can't afford a Lambo doesn't mean they sit there all day complaining about it. Oh, I can't buy a Lambo, so I'm going to go buy a Mazda or something, right, or Toyota. Well, yeah, okay, that's just the way of the world. That's what happens. If you don't have the money to buy a Lambo, but you don't have the money to buy a Toyota, you're going to go buy the Toyota, right? You're not going to sit there complaining about it all day, every day. But that's what people tend to do with Ethereum gas fees. And I think that people just miss the fact that L1 is a premium settlement layer. It is not meant to be the user layer where everything is cheap. The cheaper layers, the cheaper block space is available at layer 2 and higher layers, and that's going to get cheaper over time. So people just need to accept that layer 1 gas fees are never going to be cheap. They're never going to be cheap for the majority of people. They're never going to be cheap enough for the majority of use cases. That's just the way Ethereum is designed with its rollup centric roadmap. So people either have to deal with that, or they can keep yelling into the void. It's not going to change anything. Or you can go use another network, which is another hilarious point that I wanted to bring up, where people basically said that, oh, I'm just going to go use this other network. I'm like, okay, go use the other network. No one's stopping you. But the thing is that like on most of the other networks, there's actually nothing happening. The reason why people are paying to these fees on Ethereum is because that's where the action is, right? You don't go to somewhere where the action isn't and where it doesn't have the product that you want and go in there and say, I want to buy this product. You don't go to a grocery store and say to them, hey, I want to buy a car. Well, no, they're not going to sell you a car because they don't sell cars. Just like a lot of these other blockchains don't sell anything. They sell block space, but their block space is worthless because there is no products on there, or no, I guess, apps, I should say, that's taking up that block space that people actually want to use and interact with. It's the same concept. This is not something new. This is not something revolutionary. There are products and services. There are what people are willing to pay for them, and there is a market set rate for that product or service. For Ethereum block space, it is set by the free market, and there's no arbitrary a gas fee set on it. The gas limit is not arbitrary either. That is in place to preserve decentralization. And yes, it can change. It can go up and down. But at the end of the day, the bidding for that gas, the bidding for that block space is done by the open market. And if you can't afford it or you don't think it's worth it, there are other options for you. But as I said, like if what you want to buy is on Ethereum L1, if that meme coin you want to buy is only on L1, well, if you want it bad enough, you're going to pay the fee for it, right? It's a harsh reality, but that's just the way the world works, guys. I don't know why I have to explain this, and I probably don't have to explain it to all of you, but just generally, that's how I think about these things, and that's why it kind of gets on my nerves a lot when I see people complaining about it, because they don't understand a lot of different things about Ethereum. They don't understand the rollup-centric roadmap. They don't understand blockchains generally. They don't understand what products blockchains sell. They don't understand that Ethereum L1 is not being optimized for end users. It's being optimized as a settlement layer. And they don't understand why people actually want to use Ethereum over their own favorite chain. And at the end of the day, that's because Ethereum offers the best products and services for those people. And that's all it is. So if you want people to use your chain or your favorite chain, build something that people want to use. But anyway, I'm going to end that rant there because I went on for way too long. There's just one last thing I wanted to talk about, which is actually not got to do with Ethereum. Funny enough, it's got to do with Bitcoin ordinals. Now, this has been the talk of the town, I guess, for the last week, but for months now. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why I think ordinals and just all the activity happening on Bitcoin through Taproot, it is actually bearish. Now, I'm not just saying that because people think I hate Bitcoin. I don't hate Bitcoin, but I'm not just saying that because it's Bitcoin and not Ethereum. I don't think that what Bitcoin is doing is competing with Ethereum in any way. But the reason why I think it's bearish is very similar to the reason that How Press does. So He put out a tweet here where he said, "For a long time, it was much more straightforward as an institution to own BTC versus ETH. You knew exactly what you were getting, and ETH was more in flux. Now that BTC is finally starting to confront the decisions ahead, its path is much more uncertain, while ETH, on the other hand, is largely ossified. In many ways, it is more straightforward to own ETH at the moment, especially with the multiple imminent BTC supply overhangs. Would imagine the institutional pendulum begins to swing further in the direction of ETH as a result." So I think it's quite funny how the tables have turned here. Right now, the way Bitcoin is, I guess, acting as a network and the way people are using it to mint these BRC20 tokens and all this other stuff, Bitcoin it looks like a dollar store version of Ethereum. It doesn't look like something that would challenge Ethereum in any way. What they have is extremely limited. It actually can't challenge Ethereum in any way. Taproot enables some kind of novel use cases, but nothing like what Ethereum does, right? And people are building these things in such a way where it's ridiculous. The way you actually mint a BRC20 token is so convoluted. I looked at it and I'm like, what the hell? Like, what's going on here? But generally, Bitcoin sold itself, and its main narrative has been that simplicity, that 21 million coins, digital gold, payment system for the world, right? Store of value, all that sorts of stuff there. But now with all this extra stuff being bolted on, they're doing NFTs now, they're doing tokens now, they're doing this and that. People look at that and they're like, well, I mean, it literally is just doing what Ethereum is doing in a much worse way. So why is this actually good for Bitcoin? People say, oh, because it's good for the fee market. I'm like, okay, maybe short term, but like there's no way to know if this is going to be long-term sustainable or not. I honestly don't think it will be, because I think that usually you have a short-term speculative mania around kind of new use cases and new things that happen. But to have a long-term sustainable ecosystem is very hard, right? It's very hard to do. And you can't build something like you can on Ethereum on Bitcoin, even with Taproot's features that it introduced. So I'm looking at it right now and I'm thinking, wow, Bitcoin has actually lost its simple narrative, because it's no longer just a digital gold or a store of value. It's now this kind of thing that no one really knows how to define anymore. Like, is it trying to be a store of value in digital gold, like a hard money, or is it trying to be like Ethereum? What is going on here? It's in this kind of weird limbo state that no one knows what's going on, and that is going to scare investors. I think I really do think that's going to scare investors, because they're going to look at that and be like, well, I used to think BTC was certain. I used to think it was fine because it was going to be like gold. It wasn't going to change. I could hold it in my portfolio and forget about it for 10 years. But now with all this stuff happening there, what's going to happen when Bitcoin has to tackle with MEV? What's going to happen when the chain starts becoming unstable due to various different things that are happening? And there already has been some of that going on. How is Bitcoin going to deal with these issues? How is it ever going to be a payments network? The Lightning Network doesn't actually work. So what's going to happen here? So I think those questions are going to be more and more at the front of mind for a lot of people, and it's going to scare potential investors off, and it's going to make the narrative around Bitcoin a lot more convoluted than it has been. Whereas Ethereum, as Howard points out, it's largely ossified in that, like, it has a defined roadmap. There are things coming to its network, but the major things have already come. The merge is done. Chappelle is done, right? Proof of stake is in. 4844 will be done at the end of the year. And then there's a defined roadmap. A lot of it's being de-risked. Ethereum knows what it is. It is a settlement layer with a roll-up centric roadmap. We're scaling via layer 2s, which are live, and everything's going well there. Ethereum has been dealing with things like MEV and client diversity and keeping the chain stable in terms of high fee environments, stuff like that. So Ethereum has dealt with all of these things for many years, and I think people are going to see that and be like, okay, well, Bitcoin's just getting started with these issues, and there's really no confidence that they're going to be able to overcome this. And also, Bitcoin as a network doesn't capture any of the fee revenue into BTC, the token, because it doesn't have a burn mechanism like Ethereum does. And I think they're going to start doing a lot of these comparisons and be like, okay, well, Ethereum and ETH are actually the more stable bet at this point. And I truly do believe that. And as I said, like, I don't hate Bitcoin. I think ordinals, even though I think it's like Bitcoin is discovering fire in 2023, I think they're interesting in the Bitcoin bubble. Like, if all you pay attention to is Bitcoin, obviously ordinals is interesting to you. I think that some of the stuff that people have come up with is kind of funny. because they're basically being constrained by the network in such an extreme way that they have to come up with convoluted ways of doing things you could do in Ethereum relatively easily. But I don't believe it to be something that is long-term sustainable, that's long-term positive for Bitcoin. I really do think that this is actually long-term bad for Bitcoin, because it basically kills that main narrative that it's had for a long time, that it's simple. And the funny thing is, the Bitcoin maxis are the ones saying this as well. This is probably the first time in history that I've agreed with the Bitcoin maxis on something. They're right. Bitcoin should remain as simple as possible, and for what it wants to do, right? The fact that it's become all this complex, noisy stuff now is not actually good in my mind, from a narrative point of view and from a fundamentals point of view, I think, over the longer term. But anyway, that's my rant about ordinals there. If you disagree with me, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the Daily Gwei Discord channel or in the YouTube channel. As I said, I have no problem with Bitcoin. I do not hate it. I just think that they tried to be one thing for so long, and now they're trying to pivot to being this other thing, which looks like a really dollar store version of Ethereum. I just don't think that's going to play out positively for them. Just like I don't think it would play out positively for Ethereum if Ethereum said, oh, well, screw L2 scaling, we're going to do L1 scaling now, and then just look like a cheap version of those monolithic chains that are out there that already do L1 scaling, right? That would be similarly. I mean, if Ethereum ditched its rollup centric roadmap and tried to scale L1, I would actually abandon Ethereum. Like, I know it's a strong statement to make, but that's how strongly I believe that the L1 scaling roadmap as a monolithic chain is not the way to go. So yeah, I would criticize Ethereum for the same thing, but that's what I feel like Bitcoin is doing. It had its defined kind of narrative. It had something that people understood. People were comfortable holding BTC because of that. Outside of its security budget issues, which I've discussed before, but generally people were okay with it. Now it's become this complex, convoluted thing that is going to take a while for people to reason about and maybe understand. But at the same time, I don't think that he's going to, I don't think Bitcoin's going to be able to find that and settle into that. I think it's going to be viewed as a dollar store version of Ethereum, and I think that it's going to be a really uphill battle for them there. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that for today. This has been an extra long episode, so I hope you enjoyed it. But that's it. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.